In the decades after Harry Moseley's death, chemists found all the missing elements he had left room for. By 1945, every space was filled, from the lightest element, hydrogen, to the heaviest, uranium. The periodic table was complete, except it wasn't. By this time, the next generation of element hunters had already begun a whole new chapter. They had figured out how to create new elements, elements that didn't exist anywhere on Earth. The central character in these events was a young American chemist named Pu Seaborg. He set out with a simple desire to make one of these new elements, but he would end up changing the world forever, unleashing a force of unimaginable destructive power. But when the Germans repeated Fermi's experiments, they found that's exactly what happened.
They did not find things that looked heavier than uranium. They found well-known elements that were about half as heavy, much, much lower on the periodic table. The uranium nucleus had been split in two in a way that no one had imagined, possible or even worth looking for.
The tremendous energy released when the atom split had profound implications for a world at the brink of war. As a chemist, Seaborg was thrilled at the chance to create a new element. But he conducted his research with one eye on the changes that were sweeping the world. Albert Einstein, alarmed at these events and aware of Germany's head start in nuclear research, had written to President Roosevelt, urging him to launch an American effort to create an atomic bomb, powered by the fission of uranium. By now it was clear there are two very different kinds of uranium. Only one of them was easy to split.
The one that would do that most readily was a very unusual kind of uranium that had fewer neutrons in the nucleus, this very fissionable, potentially explosive kind of U-235.
But that's only about 1% of all the uranium. The much more common element is the uranium-238, but it doesn't fission.
But Seaborg realized he might be able to turn this inactive uranium into a new element that was capable of splitting.
We knew early on that element 94 could be a big prize. If we could transform U-238 into a fissionable material, we would increase 100-fold the amount of material usable for a bomb.
With this goal in mind, Seaborg picked up where Macmillan had left off. He knew from Macmillan's work that uranium bombarded with neutrons sometimes changed into neptunium. But neptunium itself was radioactive, spontaneously changing form. Could it be shape-shifting into element 94? To find out, Seaborg and graduate student Arthur Wall used the Berkeley cyclotron to create a sample of neptunium, in the same way Macmillan had, late one night in February 1941. There was then no doubt. They had discovered element 94, plutonium.
We felt like shouting our discovery from the rooftops. Under normal circumstances, we would have rushed to publish our claim to the discovery of a new element.
But they realized that if this was a fissionable element, it was of military importance and there was a war going on, and so they actually had to keep it secret.
The responsibility for creating the plutonium fell to Enrico Fermi, who had fled fascist Italy after winning the Nobel Prize. In an abandoned squash court under the university football stands, Fermi's team built a nuclear reactor out of wood, graphite, and uranium. In a historic experiment in December 1942, Chicago Pile 1 went critical, spitting out energy and neutrons at an ever-rising rate.
Their first ever nuclear reactor was actually creating a self-sustaining nuclear reaction. Certain nuclei would split in two, that would release some neutrons as well as energy.
Those neutrons then collide with other atoms, and then you get a cascade, which we call a chain reaction.
Fermi's chain reaction not only showed an atomic bomb was possible, but also provided a more efficient way to turn uranium-238 into plutonium. From Fermi's experiment emerged two distinct strategies for making an atomic bomb. One would seek to concentrate the tiny amount of natural uranium that could be split. The other would focus on making plutonium.
Our challenge was to find a way to separate relatively small amounts of plutonium from tons of material so intensely radioactive that no one could come near it.
As the magnitude of the challenge became clear, Seaborg would recruit more than 100 chemists to join him in the effort.
No matter what you do with the rest of your life, I said, nothing will be as important as your work on this project. It will change the world.
In 1943, banking on the process Seaborg's team had developed, the U.S. government began building a huge separation plant in Hanford, Washington. Here, in buildings as long as 3 football fields, plutonium would be made by remote control.
When my father got out there, he was just awestruck, and he couldn't believe that this element that he had discovered would result in these huge plants being built.
From Hanford came the pounds of plutonium that were needed for a bomb. On July 16, 1945, at a desert site near Alamogordo, New Mexico, scientists from nearby Los Alamos conducted the first test of an atomic bomb with a weapon made from plutonium. A blinding flash of light and a deafening explosion signaled the beginning of the nuclear age. Just 3 weeks later, an American bomber dropped a uranium bomb on the city of Hiroshima, killing 100,000 Japanese. 3 days after that, a plutonium bomb destroyed the city of Nagasaki, finally bringing the war to an end. Only then could Seaborg reveal the discovery that had made this bomb possible. For their discovery of the first 2 elements beyond uranium, Ed McMillan and Glenn Seaborg won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry.